What happens if you smuggle 200 million naira for a dangerous gangster and then you get caught by the EFCC?
Today you give me money, 20 million as I did, I go. I'll make I connect in life.
This is the case of Nnamdi Nwagba, a dedicated man who has worked his way up to the position of senior associate at Meristem Securities, an investment company. Coming from humble beginnings, Nnamdi has put in 5 years of hard work at the firm and has recently received a well-deserved promotion. As if that weren't enough good news, he has also just gotten engaged to the woman of his dreams. Nnamdi is on a fast track to a better life. His future couldn't look brighter. But you know one thing about our village people? Let's just say they decided Nnamdi's story wasn't done just yet. Trouble first arises when a group of thugs confront Nnamdi one day, threatening to kill his brother Chigozie over a large sum of money that Chigozie owed. And when I say large,
Yeah, now like 20 meters, brother.
yes. And guess what he did with it? He played 2 odds. Of course, we won't be here if he won. The situation immediately becomes tense, and Nnamdi is forced to negotiate with the thugs, fearing for his brother's safety. Their sister arrives at the scene, even more worried and concerned about the situation. In the end, Nnamdi strikes a deal with the thugs to meet them later that night, desperate to save his brother's life. After the thugs release Chigozie, Nnamdi becomes furious with his older brother, yelling at him. He cannot understand how for the life of him Chigozie could be so irrational and immature as to put himself in a situation like that with those people. On the other hand, Chigozie is also angry with Nnamdi for taking the threats from the thugs seriously. He believes their threats were just empty bluster and not something to fear. Says the person was just begging for his life a few moments ago. Chioma tries to calm her 2 brothers, but they are both overwhelmed by their emotions. She worries about Chigozie's situation and suggests using her school fees to pay off the loan. But Nnamdi immediately declines, stating that he won't risk her future for his brother's childishness and senselessness. Nnamdi believes he will find another way out of this situation, but will he? Remember, Nnamdi agreed to meet with the thugs later that night, which also happens to be the night of his engagement party as well. Talk about trouble in paradise. Later that night, while the engagement party is in full swing, Yetunde wonders where her fiancé is. Unbeknownst to her, he is out fighting a different kind of battle. Nnamdi has gone to meet the thugs as promised and is taken to Onisha Ojo, the Oga boss. It turns out that Nnamdi has a history with this group. The boss reminds Nnamdi of how he took him in, recognizing the potential in him when no one else did. Initially, he faced criticism for his dealings with an Igbo man as a Yoruba himself, but he takes pride in having been right about Nnamdi's capabilities. Now, the man wants Nnamdi to leverage his influence at his company to help launder a whopping 200 million naira for him. This request goes against every moral code that Nnamdi stands for, and he risks losing his job if he complies. The decision Nnamdi makes from this point forward is crucial. What will he do next? Nnamdi manages to make his way to an already concluded engagement party where he meets his fiancé's mother, who isn't all smiles as she would expect. She really is impressed by him, and missing his own engagement party raises even more doubts in the woman. Nonetheless, Nnamdi apologizes, and luckily, Yetunde understands that he must have been occupied with work. The mother-in-law didn't stop there though. Of course she wouldn't. She embarrasses Nnamdi in front of her friends by asking him to sign a prenup. He makes no fuss about it though, since she's the least of his problems now, and his love for her daughter is genuine. Onisha Ojo is the main hurdle Nnamdi doesn't know how to overcome. Unfortunately, Nnamdi isn't given time to sort things out because one day, the very same group of thugs barge into his home, demanding to know why he hasn't started laundering money for them. Nnamdi tries to explain that things are not so simple, but the men refuse to listen. They eventually take Chioma hostage. Meanwhile, Yetunde, who has witnessed the entire ordeal, is left in shock. She becomes overwhelmed by the situation and eventually storms out of the house, disappointed. Look, it's funny how a bed of roses can suddenly turn into a bed of thorns overnight. Nnamdi now faces the challenge of saving his family from Onisha Ojo and his gang, while also trying to keep his job.
This is very unfortunate. We gave you this chance and you threw it away in our faces? Why?
But here's what happened. Chigozie devised a plan to rescue Chioma, who is being held captive, by starting a fire at the location. Now, when Nnamdi learned of this plan, he became very agitated that he ended up saying some offensive words to some young innovators at the World Fund project that he's managing, which quickly went viral and resulted in a scandal for him and his company. As a result, Nnamdi was summoned by his superiors. The only reason he wasn't fired was that one of them still believed in his potential. Things are beginning to get shaky for him. Fortunately, Nnamdi managed to resolve his issue with a heartfelt apology. Nevertheless, this is just one of 99 problems he has to deal with. At least, he isn't jobless. Typically, after a long 9-to-5 workday, the average person in corporate society looks forward to going home to relieve the stress that accumulated throughout the day. But for Nnamdi, this isn't the case at all, as going home is a nightmare. When Nnamdi goes home, he faces demons. Following the trouble Chigozie caused in a bid to save Chioma, Nnamdi and his siblings are now facing life threats from Onisha Ojo. Nnamdi instantly pleads, begging that he will do anything to get him and his siblings out of this mess. Well, for Onisha Ojo, the only situation is for Nnamdi to launder money for him. And this time, Nnamdi seemingly doesn't have a choice. While everything at work progresses smoothly, Nnamdi develops a fondness for his employee, Ayomekun. He becomes so fond of her that he invites her to an event where they spend time together, almost like a couple. Anywho, Nnamdi introduces Ayomiku to his fiancée. But as the night concludes, Nnamdi and Ayomiku wound up kissing in his car. Whoa. And now Nnamdi is reconsidering his life choices. Look, can this man just catch one lucky break? Anyway, soon enough, Nnamdi faces his final downfall when he is arrested for financial crimes. His superiors have uncovered irregularities in the company's finances, all of which trace back to him. This is a result of the money he has been laundering for Onisha Ojo, now in police custody. Nnamdi risks facing up to 14 years in prison unless he agrees to turn in Onisha Ojo, the person he has been working for. However, Nnamdi is in a difficult position. He fears that if he implicates Onisha, his family may be in danger. The truth of the matter is, they will be. To make matters worse, Yetunde decides to break up with him. Wow, is this the end for Nnamdi? Is this where his story concludes? By losing everything just when all hope seems lost, something unexpected happens. A frenzy erupts online with the hashtag #FreeNnamdi. But how? Most of all, why? Chigozie takes to social media to explain the situation, declaring his brother's innocence and ultimately turning himself into the authorities. Claiming to have been the one who made the transaction, his brother is arrested for. Nnamdi is released, but he still fears for his safety and that of his family, since Onisha Ojo and his gang have yet to be apprehended. The good news though is that Nnamdi's name has been cleared. His superiors at work reached out to apologize, but unfortunately they cannot reinstate him at the company. Nevertheless, they do appreciate all the contributions he made during his time there. Even Yetunde regrets ending her relationship with him, but it's too late now, because even before now, their relationship was long gone. Chigozie devises a plan to lead Onisha Ojo to the police by using himself as bait. Although it's a risky strategy, he successfully carries it out and the criminals are ultimately caught. Well, all except Onisha, who is now on a run. Meanwhile, Nnamdi is focused on rebuilding his life after all the challenges he faced, with Ayomekun by his side. The trials he and his siblings have endured have only strengthened their bond, making them closer and more resilient than ever. Finally, Onisha is apprehended by the task force in a hotel room, and on that note, the movie concludes. Now let us know in the comments what you think of this movie and whether you'll be checking it out. That's a wrap for today's video, and until next time on Worthy of Recap.
Walk.